Hello everyone, wishing you a wonderful day. Today we're going to dive into a gripping story of love, loyalty, and survival as we uncover whether Jack and Tu Tien can overcome the company's financial collapse after serious bridge construction violations left them unable to even pay the bank interest. Will love be enough to carry them through their darkest chapter? If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next videos. Success changed Jack's life in many ways, but it also changed the kind of danger that began circling around him. Back when his company was still trying to survive, most of the pressure came from debt, unfinished damage, and the fear of whether people would ever trust his name again. But once he rebuilt everything, once the company grew stronger, started completing major projects, and began making real noise in the construction industry, the people watching him changed too. Some looked with respect, some looked with admiration, and some looked with greed. Jack's company was no longer just a recovering business. It had become a rising force. Major contracts were coming in. Large corporations were willing to cooperate. And more than once, industry insiders had said openly that Jack was becoming one of the most talked about names in the field. For a man who had once stood on the edge of losing everything, that kind of return should have felt like pure victory. In some ways, it did. At home, life was warm and full. Tu Tien was by his side. The little son was growing healthier and more playful by the day, and the house Jack had built for them finally felt like the kind of home he used to dream about in silence. At the office, the atmosphere was strong. Employees were proud to work under his name. Meetings were no longer about survival but expansion. But the higher Jack rose, the more quietly dangerous people began noticing him. At first, the signs were subtle. An unfamiliar broker asking unusual questions about one of Jack's upcoming projects. A representative from a private development group requesting a meeting with suspicious urgency. A proposal sent through an intermediary company that looked polished on paper but vague where it mattered most. None of those things were enough to alarm him by themselves. In construction, large sums of money always attract people who talk big, promise speed, and present shiny opportunities. Jack had been in the industry long enough to know that not every attractive offer was a good one. So he stayed careful. But what he did not yet know was that some people were already studying him. Not his public image alone. His habits, his ambitions, the type of projects he preferred, the kind of corporate language his office respected. Even the pace at which his company was willing to move when something looked promising. These were not ordinary scammers making random attempts. These were people who understood how to build a fake opportunity that looked just real enough to tempt a man whose company was growing fast and whose name had become valuable. The first real approach came through a polished introduction. A man in his 50s, calm, well-dressed, with the manner of someone used to boardrooms and expensive silence, contacted Jack's office through a chain of industry references. He claimed to represent an investment-backed development consortium, interested in launching a large mixed-use urban project in a fast-growing area. The scale was impressive. The projected numbers were even more impressive. The documents looked clean. The language was professional. The timing felt urgent in a way that made the opportunity seem exclusive. When Jack first reviewed the file, even he paused. It was the kind of project companies compete for. High value, high visibility, and if completed successfully, it would push his company into an even stronger position. He did not rush, but he did agree to an initial meeting. The man A arrived with two younger associates, neat presentations, architectural concepts, market studies, and the kind of confidence that often makes people assume money is already secured. They spoke clearly, answered quickly, and knew enough about the construction sector to sound convincing. They even praised Jack in exactly the right way, not too aggressively, not too obviously, just enough to flatter without exposing the attempt. They said they had followed his post-recovery rise closely. They said they admired the discipline of his company. They said they wanted a builder with proven resilience, not just size. Jack listened, asked questions, and kept his face unreadable. From the outside, the meeting went well. Too well, perhaps. Because when he came home that evening, Tu Tien noticed immediately that his mind was still half at the office. She was sitting on the floor with their son, helping him stack small blocks that he mostly enjoyed knocking over. Jack stepped inside, loosened his tie, and stood watching them for a moment longer than usual before speaking. "You're home late," Tu Tien said gently. Jack nodded. There was a meeting. A good one. He hesitated just enough for her to notice. Potentially a very big one. She looked up at him with interest. Bigger than the last development contract? Jack gave a small breath through his nose. Possibly. That made her sit up a little straighter. Then why do you look like you're thinking too hard? Jack walked over, picked up his son with one arm and sat down beside her. Because when something looks this good, he said quietly, I've learned not to get excited too quickly. Tu Tien smiled faintly. That sounds healthier than the old Jack. The old Jack paid enough for learning it. That answer silenced them both for a moment, because it was true. Jack no longer approached opportunity like a man dazzled by size or speed. He had already seen what hidden danger could do once. He trusted slower now, looked deeper, and made fewer assumptions. Still, over the next week, the fake project continued to hold together. More documents arrived. Land use maps, projected timelines, letters of intent, financial summaries, even what appeared to be municipal support language buried inside a larger investment memo. Everything looked structured, ambitious, real. The consortium pushed carefully, never too hard. They made the project feel just out of reach enough to keep the tension high. They hinted that other builders were interested. They suggested timing mattered. They nudged Jack toward faster movement without openly demanding recklessness. It was smart, very smart. At the office, a few of Jack's senior managers were already impressed. One of them said directly, if this is real, we should move before another firm takes it. Jack did not answer immediately. Instead, he asked for independent verification. Land ownership, financial backing, corporate registration, escrow structure, government authorization, partner identity trails, everything. That decision would later prove to be the only reason disaster did not arrive early. Because the deeper the legal and compliance team looked, the stranger things became. The registered address of one partner company matched a serviced office with no long-term staff. One land use reference connected to a parcel still under unresolved dispute. A financial guarantee letter had language that appeared real until one specific code was checked against banking records. And the biggest warning of all came from a consultant Jack trusted deeply, an older legal advisor who had once helped him during the darkest period after the bridge collapse. He sat across from Jack, removed his glasses slowly, and said, "This is either badly assembled or deliberately designed to survive surface-level review." Jack's expression changed at once. Meaning, the advisor said. Someone wants you to believe it's real long, enough for you to commit. The room went quiet, because everyone there understood what that meant. If Jack signed too early, if advance payments moved, if his company publicly attached its name to a non-existent project, the consequences would go far beyond financial loss. A scam of that size could damage investor trust, corporate credibility, and public reputation in ways that would echo for years. It would not just steal money, it would humiliate the company. And in a field like construction, humiliation can be as costly as collapse. Jack leaned back slowly in his chair and stared at the files spread across the table. Someone had built a ghost project, not sloppy enough to fool idiots, sophisticated enough to tempt serious players, and they had aimed it directly at him. That evening, when he returned home, Tu Tien knew before he said anything that the tone had changed. He was quieter now, sharper, not panicked, dangerously alert. She waited until their son was asleep before asking, "It's not a good opportunity anymore, is it?" Jack looked at her and answered with brutal honesty, "It may not be an opportunity at all." Tu Tien's face tightened. "What do you mean?" Jack sat down across from her and explained everything he could without drowning her in legal detail. The fake partner trails, the unclear land file, the financial inconsistencies, the possibility that someone had built an entire false project structure meant to lure his company into a fraudulent contract. Tu Tien listened without interrupting, but by the end of it, the color in her face had changed. They wanted to trick you into signing? Jack nodded once. And if you had, he was quiet for a moment before answering. We could have lost a huge amount of money, and worse than that, the company could have been dragged into public disgrace again. Silence settled between them. Then Tu Tien asked the one question that mattered most. Do you know who's behind it? Jack's eyes darkened slightly. Not yet, he said. But I know this wasn't random. And in the quiet of their carefully rebuilt life, one thought rose clearly between them both. Now that Jack's success had made him a target for people willing to build lies big enough to look real, was this only the first trap, or the beginning of a much larger attack on everything he had rebuilt? That thought did not leave Jack after that night. The fake project was too carefully built to be dismissed as an ordinary scam. Too many details had been polished. Too many layers had been added to make it look legitimate. Whoever designed it understood how major construction deals were evaluated, how corporate trust was built, and how fast a company like Jack's might move when an opportunity seemed large enough. This was not clumsy fraud. It was a trap, and if Jack had been less careful, if success had made him arrogant or impatient, he might already have stepped into it. The next morning, he went into the office earlier than usual and called only a small group into a closed meeting. His legal advisor, the compliance team, one senior financial officer, and the two managers who had reviewed the proposal most closely. He placed the full file on the table and looked at each of them before speaking. From now on, no one outside this room treats this as a live project, he said. No verbal commitments, no draft agreements, no financial movement, no off-record discussion, no one argued. Because by then, the seriousness of the situation had already settled over them. The legal advisor began laying out the warning signs one by one. The partner consortium's registration trail was inconsistent. The land documents referred to approvals that did not fully exist. The banking support letter had been formatted to look authentic but failed technical verification. And the most dangerous part of all was that every false layer had been wrapped in just enough truth to survive normal business review. Jack listened in silence, his hands folded, his face calm. But inside, anger had already begun moving through him. Not reckless anger, cold anger. Because someone had not just tried to cheat him out of money. Someone had tried to use his own success against him. And worse, they had aimed directly at the thing he had fought hardest to restore his company's name. By midday, Jack made another decision. He did not want to simply withdraw and walk away quietly. If this was a real fraud network, then disappearing from the conversation too early might only warn them that he had seen through it. And if that happened, they could vanish, regroup, and target someone else, or come back in a different form later. So instead, he chose something riskier. He told the team to keep the conversation alive, just enough to gather more, not enough to commit, enough to observe. The next meeting with the so-called consortium was scheduled 2 days later in a private conference room at a business hotel. This time, Jack arrived even more controlled than before. He wore the same calm professionalism, asked the same sharp questions, and gave away nothing. The lead representative smiled easily, talked about urgency, and pressed again on timing. He spoke of investors waiting, land value moving, opportunity windows narrowing. It was exactly the kind of pressure language meant to make people act before checking too deeply. Jack let him speak. Then he asked a series of questions that were simple on the surface, but specific enough to test whether the man truly understood the project structure behind his own presentation. The first answer came too fast. The second sounded polished but empty. The third contradicted a number in the written file. And by the fourth, Jack was certain the man in front of him was not just representing a lie. He was trying to sell one. Still, Jack did not expose him, not yet. He only nodded, made a few neutral comments, and said his legal team would require one more round of verification before anything moved toward contract language. For the briefest second, he saw it, a flash in the man's eyes. Not panic, annoyance. That flash told him more than the meeting had, because it confirmed that delay was dangerous to them, which meant the trap was active, not theoretical. That evening, Jack returned home later than he wanted, but Tu Tien was still awake, waiting in the sitting room with a small lamp on and their son asleep in the next room. The moment she saw his face, she knew the situation had deepened. "You confirmed it?" she asked quietly. Jack nodded once. "Yes." Tu Tien's fingers tightened around the cup in her hands. "It's fake." "Yes, and they were trying to make you sign before you could fully check everything." Jack sat down across from her. "Yes." The room went very quiet. Then Tu Tien asked a question that mattered even more than the fraud itself. "Are you safe?" Jack looked at her for a moment before answering. "For now." She did not like those last two words. Neither did he. Because once fraud reaches this level, it often means the people behind it are watching more than paperwork. They watch reactions, delays, changes in tone. They look for signs that their target has become suspicious. And if they realize that, they do not always leave cleanly. The next stage came faster than expected. One of the company's mid-level business development staff received a private message from an unknown number, telling him in vague but threatening language not to interfere with private investment matters he did not understand. Another employee reported being approached after work by someone casually asking whether Jack usually signed personally or let legal do the final review first. By then, the pattern was obvious. They were not only running a fake deal, they were probing Jack's company from the outside. Jack reported everything through legal channels and brought in authorities' quietele. The evidence trail was prepared, communications were preserved, and the fraud file was transferred under formal review. But even with that protection in motion, the emotional cost had already entered the house. Tu Tien felt it first in the way Jack started checking the locks twice at night. Then in how often he paused before answering unknown calls. Then in the way he looked toward his son whenever a late-night message arrived. One night, after putting the baby back to sleep, she found Jack standing in the dark near the window, not really looking outside, just thinking. She walked over quietly and stood beside him. "You doing it again," she said softly. Jack glanced at her. "Doing what?" "Trying to carry danger alone before it even reaches the door." He looked away for a second. "I'm trying to keep it from reaching the door at all." Tu Tien understood that. And yet she also understood the cost of that instinct. Because this was how it began before silence, burden, protection, and the slow pressure of danger trying to get inside before anyone named it properly. So she turned toward him and said very calmly, "Then let me stand there with you." Jack's face changed. Not dramatically, just enough for her to know the words had landed. "I don't want this touching you again," he said quietly. "It already does," she answered. "Anything that threatens you, the company, or this family already touches me." That was the truth neither of them could argue with. They had built too much together now for danger to stay neatly outside one person's life. By the end of the week, the authorities confirmed what Jack's instincts had already told him. The fake consortium was linked to a larger fraud network that targeted construction firms, especially those in aggressive growth phases. They used forged development structures, false land documentation, staged financial backing, and urgency tactics to lure companies into contract commitments, advance payments, and reputational exposure. Jack had not been chosen randomly. He had been chosen because his rise had become visible, because his company had money, because his name had value, and because to the wrong people that made him worth hunting. When the lead contacts stopped responding and the entire project structure began disappearing behind dead numbers and vanished shell entities, the threat changed shape. The immediate trap had failed. But the deeper message remained. Jack's company was now important enough to attract predators. That realization stayed with him more heavily than he expected. Not because he was afraid of work, not because he doubted his judgment, but because he understood what this meant for the future. From here on, success would bring not only opportunity, but calculated danger. Later that night, after all the official calls ended and the house finally quieted down, Jack sat beside Tu Tien while their son slept peacefully between them. The child's small breathing filled the silence in the gentlest possible way. Tu Tien looked at Jack and asked, "So, is it over?" Jack was quiet for a moment. Then he answered honestly, "This trap is over." She held his gaze. "And the rest?" Jack looked down at their son, then back at her. I think this is the part where we learn that success doesn't end trouble. It just changes the kind of trouble that comes. Tu Tien listened without speaking. Jack reached for her hand. "But I'm not the same man I used to be," he said. "And this company isn't the same company either." That gave her some peace. Not certainty, but peace. Because he was right. They were no longer standing where they once had naively, exposed and easy to break. They had survived too much for that. Still, as the night wrapped around their home, and the child between them slept without knowing how close another danger had come, one question remained, quietly alive. Now that Jack had escaped the trap designed to steal his money and destroy his name, was this only one failed scheme or the first sign that greater enemies were already preparing their next move?